Hey, what's up? COVID-19, the novel coronavirus. I'm an English teacher. Usually I like novels. Has made us all become teleteachers, even if we had no experience doing that kind of thing before. It's left many of us teachers wondering, how can we best teach our students at this time? How can we help them learn and grow as we always have? That's why I made these videos. I call this series TIFTO, short for Tips for Teaching Online. Tiptoe through the tulips? I'm an education professor and a 20-year teaching veteran, but I don't have all the answers. Each episode, though, I'll try and share an idea with you. There's no such thing as a one-size-fits-all approach in teaching. But here's one thing you could consider. Modify or reject as you see fit. You know yourself and your students best. That all said, here we go with today's idea. When you're working in an online environment, you can't just expect to lecture and have students learn or even pay attention. In fact, this is the case even in a face-to-face classroom. One of the ways you can design a lesson to try and get every single student engaged, doing something, and being accountable for learning is a TPS, or Think, Pair, Share. It's just what it sounds like. For a given question, task, or assignment, students begin by thinking through a problem or question, maybe writing it down to turn it into you if you want to hold them accountable for actually doing it. Although this has to be a did it or didn't do it kind of grade. They need low stakes at this stage, or else they'll be too scared to come up with new ideas. Next, they pair with a neighbor, and the two compare their ideas and refine their understandings. You can then have them share out further into a small group of 4 or 5, before finally bringing everyone back together to ask the class to engage with it as a whole. Since when you're teaching remotely, you don't have the ability to actually have students move around the room to talk to each other, you'll have to recreate that same effect through using private chat functions or shared Google Docs between students. This has the added benefit of providing you and the students, as well, with a transcript of what they discuss, for accountability and learning purposes. You could even go all out and use breakout rooms. Zoom, Google Hangouts, WebEx, Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, Big Blue Button, they all have breakout rooms as a feature. If you're not familiar with how breakout rooms work for your particular platform, you can search online for a tutorial on how to use them. The basic concept is this. You can create virtual rooms and assign certain students to certain groups, just like you would if you grouped them in your classroom. Only because each group is in its own isolated bubble, they can't hear, distract, or be distracted by the other groups, and you can pop into any group you want to anytime. So why do all this think, pair, share group stuff? Well, there are many reasons. When it comes to those spot checks, that formative assessment, just asking a question to the class, what's the blank, or can anyone tell me blank, always risks resulting in just 1 or 2 kids raising their hands and everybody else spacing out. Cold calling students raises their anxiety level and leads them to not necessarily do their best work when they're suddenly put in the spot, and every other student in the room, relieved, may still tune out. With the TPS, everybody reviews, and by the time they all come back, students will have had the prep time to confer and possibly be helped by their classmates. They'll be more confident to giving an answer in front of the class. Now, it is possible that as all this group work goes on, it might turn out that just a handful of well-prepared kids are carrying the weight and everyone else is learning from them. But that means they're learning. No, a TPS isn't the tool you want to use to check every individual student's mastery of a concept, but it can be a terrific tool for review and reinforcement, and it involves everyone. You can also structure instruction around a TPS model. See, the usual model in a classroom lesson, as you probably know, is the old I do, we do, you do model. In other words, the teacher or the textbook defines the problem, and then you as the teacher model the solution. Then you ask the class to do it together with you as you're still leading them along. Then maybe the students do it together in groups, and finally, students are responsible on their own for demonstrating that they've mastered this skill or concept that's at the core of the lesson or unit. But a TPS approach explodes that model of instruction. It looks much more like what we sometimes call the inquiry model of instruction, where instead of beginning with the teacher, we begin with the individual student. A student alone or in a pair or even a larger group tries to attempt to find a solution or shape an understanding. Remember, this part has to be low stakes. You can't penalize students at this stage when they've really got very little background or resources or evidence of success to fall back on. When the students individually or in pairs or in groups have gotten as far as they can get on their own, then you as the teacher come in, begin to facilitate a conversation. You nudge, you reinforce, you hint. You keep an eye out and an ear out if they're really going far afield, and then you sort of guide them back to the kinds of questions and the kinds of realms in which you want them to be hunting for the answers. But you don't answer the problem for them if you can help it. It's hard to resist that urge to do that, but make them work for it. Remember, they're the ones here whose job it is to learn, and if you do the work for them, then you've robbed them of that opportunity. Finally, it's time for you to shine. Validate their ideas. Show them an expansion. How would a pro do it? That's the time to do your big lecture, not at the very beginning. Because at this point, students have that direct experience, they've gotten their arms deep into the problem, and now they can see how a pro would do it and make it clear that they need to be that pro by the end of the lesson or unit or whenever it is that final assessment's coming up. I've done this kind of lesson a lot, and I will be honest, it is much harder to plan and it takes much longer to get anything done. But the payoff is, it's much more engaging. Every student is involved from the get-go, rather than just you, the teacher, yakking away and the kids are busy surfing social media because, hey, it's remote learning. You can't see what they're doing most of the time. Also, it turns out that it's more in line with research about how students actually learn. See, we don't just copy knowledge from a teacher or a textbook into our brain. We construct it through our own process of questioning, of experimenting, of interactions with others. There are many other applications for a TPS as well. See how many you can find and write to me about what worked and what didn't at edinfinitumpodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for watching. If you liked what you saw, subscribe and/or check out my podcast, Ed Infinitum, at www.ed-infinitum.com, available wherever it is you get your podcasts. Bye now, and stay healthy.